What happens when advanced alien civilizations, desperate in their darkest hour, reach out to the most unlikely planet in the galaxy for help? What happens when they ask Earth, a world they've dismissed as primitive, to send them their most terrifying creature? They expected myths and legends. They expected something from human nightmares. Instead, humanity delivered something far worse. 65 million years of evolution's most perfect killing machine, wrapped in scales and powered by pure prehistoric fury. The aliens asked for a monster. Earth gave them a saltwater crocodile, and the universe would never be the same. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called at 300 Standard Galactic Time, and Ambassador Zyxthara could feel the desperation radiating from every species representative in the massive crystalline chamber. The usually pristine council floor was scattered with data tablets, emergency communication devices, and the debris of hasty meal containers from delegates who had been working around the clock for the past 72 hours. "The situation is beyond critical," announced High Chancellor Vexmer, her 6 arms gesturing wildly as holographic displays showed the advancing void hunters across multiple star systems. 7 colonies have fallen in the past week. 3 entire species have been consumed. Zyxthara watched the horrific footage with her large, compound eyes. The void hunters were unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. They weren't just conquerors or raiders, they were something far worse. They consumed entire worlds, stripping them not just of life, but of the very essence that made planets habitable. Where they passed, only empty husks of rock remained, drifting in space like cosmic tombstones. "Our combined fleets have proven ineffective," continued the Chancellor, her voice cracking with barely controlled panic. "Their ships are biological constructs that adapt to our weapons. Our energy beams become useless after the first strike. Our kinetic rounds are absorbed and used to strengthen their hulls. Even our most advanced AI combat systems have been compromised." The Volnari representative, a tall, ethereal being with skin that shifted between translucent blue and deep purple, stood up slowly. "We need something they cannot predict, something outside their understanding, something primitive." A collective murmur rippled through the assembly. The galaxy had long ago moved beyond primitive warfare. Energy shields, quantum torpedoes, dimensional phase shifters, these were the tools of modern combat. The suggestion of using something primitive was almost insulting. "What are you proposing?" asked General Korth, the Saurian military commander whose species had dominated galactic warfare for the past 2 centuries. "There is a world," the Volnari delegate said, consulting a data tablet with trembling fingers. "Designation Sol 3, the inhabitants call it Earth. Our xenobiological surveys indicate it hosts some of the most aggressive life forms we've ever cataloged. The dominant species, humans, they're still in their technological infancy, but their planet is a death world." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Death worlds were the stuff of legend, planets so hostile that life shouldn't exist there, yet somehow did, creating creatures of unimaginable resilience and ferocity. "Impossible," scoffed the Altarian delegate, his metallic carapace clicking as he shifted. "No civilization could evolve on a death world. The requirements for complex society would be—" "The data is verified," interrupted the Volnari. "Gravity 1.2 times galactic standard, atmospheric pressure that would crush most of our species, weather patterns that include massive electrical storms, cyclonic winds exceeding 300 units, and temperature variations that span over 100 degrees in a single planetary rotation. And the life forms." The holographic display changed, showing images that made even the battle-hardened General Korth step backward. Massive predators with rows of serrated teeth, creatures that could survive in both aquatic and terrestrial environments, beings that had remained virtually unchanged for millions of their planetary years, perfect evolutionary machines. "The humans," continued the Volnari delegate, "they share this world with creatures that predate their civilization by hundreds of millions of years. And not only do they survive, they thrive. They've domesticated some of these creatures. They've built societies despite constant predation from beings that could tear through our strongest armor." Ambassador Zyxthara found herself leaning forward, fascinated despite the dire circumstances. "What are you suggesting we do with this information?" "We ask them for help," the Volnari said simply. "We ask the humans to send us their most terrible creature, something the void hunters have never encountered, something so alien to their experience that their adaptation abilities will be useless." The chamber erupted in debate. The concept was unprecedented, the Galactic Council asking for help from a pre-spaceflight civilization. It was humiliating, it was desperate. It was. It might actually work, General Korth said slowly, studying the data on Earth's predators. Look at these specifications. This creature they call a saltwater crocodile, armor-like skin that deflects energy, bite force that exceeds our industrial crushers, capable of remaining completely motionless for hours before striking. The Void Hunter's sensory systems are designed to detect technological signatures and energy patterns. This would be invisible to them until it was too late. High Chancellor Vexmer raised one of her primary arms for silence. The chamber gradually quieted, though nervous energy continued to crackle through the assembled delegates. The proposal is this, she announced. We make contact with Earth. We explain our situation to the humans and ask them to provide us with one of their apex predators. In exchange, we offer them limited technology transfers and protection once this crisis is resolved. Assuming we survive this crisis, muttered the Rigelian observer. The humans have no concept of the greater galaxy, pointed out the Centaurian delegate. How could we possibly explain the situation to them? They probably still think they're alone in the universe. The Volnari delegate smiled, an expression that didn't quite translate properly to his alien features, but conveyed amusement nonetheless. According to our cultural analysis, humans have been fantasizing about alien contact for decades. They have entire entertainment industries built around the concept. They'll adapt to the news of galactic civilization much faster than you might expect. And if they refuse, asked Zyxthara, then we fall back to conventional defense strategies and hope our combined fleets can hold long enough to evacuate the core worlds, the Chancellor replied grimly. The vote was closer than anyone expected, but it passed. Within 6 hours, the fastest scout ship in the galactic fleet was racing toward the Sol system, carrying a message that would change everything for the small blue-green planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. Commander Velter of the Exploration Corps had been chosen for the mission specifically because of his experience with primitive civilizations. His ship, the Whisper of Stars, was equipped with universal translators and cultural adaptation protocols. As he approached Earth's solar system, he couldn't help but marvel at the raw, chaotic beauty of this corner of space. The system was a marvel of gravitational dynamics, multiple large planets in stable orbits, asteroid belts that spoke of ancient collisions, and at the center of it all, the third planet. Even from a distance, he could see the massive weather system swirling across its surface, the polar ice caps that expanded and contracted with the planet's seasons, and the single large moon that created tidal forces strong enough to influence planetary geology. This place is terrifying, his pilot, Ensign Zekli, whispered as they began their approach. Look at those storm systems. That one over the western continent is large enough to engulf our home planet. Velter nodded, checking his instruments. And according to the surveys, humans consider that a normal weather pattern. They've built their entire civilization while dealing with forces that would flatten our cities. As they entered Earth's atmosphere, staying carefully cloaked to avoid detection, Velter marveled at the planet's diversity. Vast oceans teeming with life, continents covered in green vegetation that processed atmospheric gases, mountain ranges that scraped the edge of space itself, and everywhere, signs of human habitation. Sir, Zekli called out, I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the northern continent. It appears to be cities, but they're enormous. Velter looked at the readings and felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. The human settlements weren't just large. They were sprawling metropolises that housed millions of individuals, connected by transportation networks that spanned continents. This wasn't a primitive civilization. This was a species that had mastered planetary engineering without even leaving their home world. Commander, his communications officer announced, I'm picking up electromagnetic transmissions, thousands of them. The humans appear to have a global information network. Can you tap into it? Already working on it, sir. The universal translator is having some difficulty with their linguistic variations. They appear to have hundreds of different languages, but I'm starting to get coherent translations. For the next several hours, Velter and his crew absorbed human culture at light speed. They watched their entertainment broadcasts, read their news networks, studied their scientific journals, and gradually built a picture of a species unlike anything in the galactic database. Humans were contradictions wrapped in mystery. They created art of stunning beauty and weapons of devastating power in equal measure. They were capable of incredible compassion and horrifying cruelty, sometimes within the same individual. They had split the atom and painted the Sistine Chapel. They had walked on their moon and composed symphonies that moved listeners to tears. But most importantly for the current mission, they were utterly fascinated with the creatures that shared their planet. "Sir, you need to see this," the communications officer called out. "I've found multiple data networks dedicated entirely to what they call wildlife documentation. They have extensive databases on every predator species on their planet, including detailed behavioral analysis and interaction protocols." Velter studied the information streaming across his screens. These humans didn't just coexist with apex predators. They studied them, respected them, and in some cases, formed bonds with them. There were humans who worked directly with creatures that could kill them without effort, and they did it not out of necessity, but out of curiosity and admiration. "This Steve Irwin individual," Zeckley said, reading over Velter's shoulder. "He appears to have spent his life interacting with the most dangerous creatures on the planet, and they loved him for it." "And look at this," the communications officer added. "Entire research institutions dedicated to understanding predator behavior. They call it conservation. They're actually working to protect the creatures that could threaten them." Velter made his decision. "Set us down near this location," he said, indicating a point on the map marked as Australia Wildlife Research Station. "If we're going to ask humans for their help, we should probably start with the ones who understand their predators best." As the whisper of stars descended toward the red earth of the Australian continent, none of the crew could have imagined what they were about to unleash upon the galaxy. They were about to introduce the universe to something that had no equivalent among the stars, a species that had turned cooperation with apex predators into an art form, and apex predators that had been shaped by hundreds of millions of years of evolution into perfect killing machines. The Void Hunters were about to discover that there were still things in the universe capable of surprising them. And surprise, as any human could have told them, was often the last thing a predator's prey ever experienced. Dr. Sarah Chen was having what she thought was a perfectly normal Tuesday morning at the Northern Territory Wildlife Research Station when the world changed forever. She was reviewing footage from the previous day's crocodile behavioral study, sipping her third cup of coffee, and trying to figure out why Goliath, their largest saltwater crocodile, had been exhibiting unusual territorial displays near the eastern boundary of his enclosure. The first sign that this wasn't going to be an ordinary day came when every piece of electronic equipment in the facility began malfunctioning simultaneously. Her computer screen flickered to static, the radio started emitting a high-pitched whine, and the security cameras went dark. "Must be another solar flare," she muttered, reaching for her phone to call the meteorology station. The phone was dead, too. That's when she looked out the window and saw the impossible. A sleek, silver craft roughly the size of a commercial airliner was settling gently onto the research station's landing pad, displacing the 3 helicopters that were normally parked there. It made no sound whatsoever, defying everything she knew about physics and aerodynamics. Dr. Chen stood frozen for several long seconds, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. Then her scientific training kicked in, and she reached for the emergency communication system, only to remember that all electronics had failed. The craft's hull began to shimmer, and a section simply melted away, revealing an opening that definitely hadn't been there moments before. 3 figures emerged, and Dr. Chen felt her worldview crumble completely. They were clearly not human. The first figure was tall and lean, with skin that seemed to shift between different shades of blue and green. His head was elongated, with large, multifaceted eyes that reflected light like prisms. The second was shorter and more heavily built, with what appeared to be a metallic exoskeleton and multiple arm-like appendages. The third was somewhere in between, covered in fine scales that caught the morning sunlight. Dr. Chen realized she was holding her breath and forced herself to exhale. In all her years of scientific fieldwork, she had encountered deadly predators, natural disasters, and equipment failures that could have killed her. But nothing had prepared her for this moment. The tall figure approached the research station's main building with fluid, deliberate movements. When it reached the entrance, it paused and made a series of sounds that definitely weren't any human language she'd ever heard. Then, impossibly, The sounds resolved into English. "Dr. Sarah Chen," the being said, its voice carrying harmonics that no human throat could produce. "We request permission to enter your facility. We bring greetings from the Galactic Council and an urgent request for assistance." Dr. Chen opened her mouth to respond, found that no sound emerged, closed it, tried again, and finally managed to croak out. "I'm sorry, did you just say Galactic Council?" "We did. My name is Commander Velter of the Ilnari Exploration Corps. We have traveled a very long distance to speak with you about your planet's most formidable predators. The fate of several civilizations may depend on this conversation." Dr. Chen looked around the compound, noting that her research assistants were slowly emerging from various buildings, all wearing expressions of shocked disbelief. Her mentor, Dr. James Morrison, was approaching from the crocodile enclosures, his weathered face pale but his eyes bright with the kind of excitement that came from witnessing something unprecedented. "Dr. Morrison," she called out, "are you seeing this too?" "Unless we're both having the same hallucination, yes," he replied, stopping a respectful distance from the alien delegation. "Commander Velter, is it? I'm Dr. James Morrison, director of this research station. Perhaps you'd better come inside and explain exactly what kind of assistance you're looking for." As they moved toward the main building, Dr. Chen couldn't help but notice that Commander Velter and his companions moved with the fluid grace of natural predators themselves. There was something about the way they scanned their environment, the way they positioned themselves relative to potential threats and escape routes, that reminded her of the apex predators she studied. The main conference room had never been designed to host first contact with an alien species, but Dr. Morrison gestured for everyone to take seats around the worn wooden table that had seen countless research planning sessions and funding meetings. Commander Velter declined the offer of a chair, instead standing in a way that kept all exits visible. "We will be direct, as time is a critical factor. Our galaxy is under attack by entities we call the Void Hunters. They are unlike any threat we have previously encountered. They consume entire worlds, and our conventional weapons and tactics have proven ineffective against them." "I'm sorry," Dr. Chen interrupted, "but I have to ask, how is it that you're speaking English, and how do you even know about our research station? Your planet has been under observation for several decades. We have extensive databases on your languages, cultures, and scientific capabilities. As for why we're here specifically..." Velter gestured to one of his companions, who produced a device that projected holographic images into the air above the table. The images showed creatures that made even the largest crocodiles look small. Massive predators with multiple rows of teeth, armor-plated hunters that moved through environments that looked utterly alien, and massive serpentine creatures that could apparently survive in the vacuum of space. "These are the Void Hunters," Velter explained. "They are biological constructs, evolved or engineered specifically for destruction and consumption. Our energy weapons are absorbed and redirected. Our kinetic weapons are ineffective against their armor. Our most advanced artificial intelligence systems have been compromised by some form of technological infection they carry." Dr. Morrison leaned forward, studying the images with the intensity of a man who had spent his life understanding predator behavior. "What does this have to do with us? We're barely capable of space travel, and our weapons technology is primitive compared to what you're describing." "That is precisely why we need your help," Velter replied. "The Void Hunters adapt to any threat they encounter. Their sensory systems are designed to detect and counter technological signatures and energy patterns, but they have never encountered anything like Earth's predators." The holographic display changed, showing detailed specifications of various Earth creatures. Dr. Chen saw profiles for great white sharks, Siberian tigers, African lions, and dozens of other apex predators. But the image that dominated the display was one that made her heart race with professional excitement and personal terror. It was Goliath. "Your saltwater crocodile," Velter said, and even through the alien harmonics of his voice, she could hear something that sounded like respect. "According to our analysis, this creature represents the pinnacle of predatory evolution, armor-like scales that can deflect energy weapons, bite force that exceeds our industrial crushing equipment, the ability to remain completely motionless for extended periods before striking with lightning speed. Most importantly, it operates on instinct and biological processes that our enemies cannot predict or counter." Dr. Morrison was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. You want us to give you a crocodile to fight alien invaders. We want you to give us your most dangerous crocodile, Velter corrected. We need a creature that can survive in hostile environments, operate independently, and eliminate targets that our most advanced weapons cannot touch. In exchange, we offer technological advancement, protection, and eventual membership in the Galactic Council. Dr. Chen found herself laughing, a sound that bordered on hysteria. You're asking us to weaponize Goliath against space aliens. We are asking you to save the galaxy, Velter replied seriously. And we believe that your crocodile may be the only thing capable of doing so. The room fell silent except for the distant sounds of the Australian bush and the occasional splash from the crocodile enclosures. Dr. Chen realized that the next words spoken would determine not just the fate of their research station, but potentially the future of multiple civilizations. The future had just become very, very interesting. 3 days after first contact, the Northern Territory Wildlife Research Station had been transformed into something resembling a cross between a military base and an alien technology fair. Dr. Chen watched from her office window as the Lunari engineers worked alongside human technicians to modify the largest transport container anyone had ever seen. A crystalline chamber the size of a shipping container that could apparently maintain any environment imaginable. The initial shock of alien contact had worn off, replaced by the kind of focused intensity that came with preparing for something unprecedented. Word of the situation had reached the highest levels of government within hours, but the aliens had made it clear that Earth's political structures were irrelevant to their needs. They needed experts who understood apex predators, and they needed them now. Dr. Morrison emerged from the alien vessel for the third time that morning, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and wonder. The past 72 hours had been a crash course in galactic biology, and the information was overwhelming. The environmental specifications are incredible, he told Dr. Chen as they walked toward Goliath's enclosure. They can recreate any terrestrial environment perfectly, temperature, humidity, water composition, even gravitational adjustments if needed. But they want to know everything about Goliath's behavior patterns, dietary requirements, and territorial instincts. Dr. Chen checked her tablet, which now displayed information in both human language and flowing the Lunari script, thanks to the universal translator they'd been given. I've been analyzing his behavioral data for the past 2 years. He's unusual even for a saltwater crocodile, larger than average, more aggressive, and he's shown problem-solving abilities that go beyond typical reptilian intelligence. They paused at the edge of Goliath's enclosure, a specially designed habitat that replicated the natural environment of Australia's saltwater crocodiles. The massive reptile was basking on a muddy bank, perfectly still except for the occasional blink of his amber eyes. At nearly 20 feet long and weighing close to 2 tons, he was a magnificent example of evolutionary perfection. He doesn't look like much when he's resting, observed Commander Velter, who had approached with his characteristic silent grace. But our analysis of his physiological specifications is remarkable. The bite force alone would crush most of our defensive armor. Dr. Chen nodded, professional pride mixing with growing concern for the creature she'd spent years studying. Goliath isn't just physically impressive, he's intelligent. He's learned to recognize individual researchers, he modifies his hunting strategies based on prey behavior, and he's shown what can only be described as tactical thinking. Tactical thinking? Velter's compound eyes focused intently on her. Elaborate, please. Last year, we introduced a new feeding protocol using mechanical dispensers to simulate natural hunting conditions. Most crocodiles adapted to the new system within a few days, learning to associate the mechanical sounds with feeding time. Goliath did something different. He learned to use the dispensers as tools. Dr. Morrison activated a tablet displaying video footage. Watch this, Day 3 of the new protocol. The video showed Goliath approaching one of the mechanical feeders, but instead of waiting for it to activate, he positioned himself downstream and began creating vibrations in the water that triggered the feeder's motion sensors. When fish were released, they were swept by the current directly into his waiting jaws. He weaponized the feeding system, Dr. Chen explained. And that's not the only example. He's learned to use floating debris to approach prey undetected. He's figured out how to manipulate water levels in his enclosure to create advantageous hunting positions. And most remarkably, he's begun exhibiting behavior that suggests he understands human schedules and routines. Velter was quiet for several minutes, processing this information. The Void Hunters operate primarily on biological adaptability and energy absorption. Their tactics rely on overwhelming technological superiority and their ability to counter any organized resistance. A predator that thinks tactically operates on pure biological instinct and uses environmental factors as weapons. Would be completely outside their experience, Dr. Morrison finished. But there's something else you need to understand about Goliath specifically. He's not just unusually large or intelligent. He's unusually aggressive. Most saltwater crocodiles are ambush predators that conserve energy between hunts. Goliath actively seeks out challenges. As if summoned by their conversation, Goliath shifted position slightly, his massive head turning toward the group of observers. Dr. Chen felt that familiar chill of being evaluated by a predator that feared nothing and could kill anything that entered its domain. We've recorded him attacking boats, challenging larger prey animals, and even engaging in what appears to be territorial disputes with helicopters flying overhead, she continued. He doesn't just hunt for food. He seems to enjoy the challenge of defeating increasingly difficult opponents. The next few hours were spent in intensive briefings with the Vulnari team. Dr. Chen found herself explaining concepts that no xenobiologist had ever needed to consider. How do you transport a 2-ton apex predator across interstellar space? How do you ensure his psychological well-being in an alien environment? How do you deploy him effectively against enemies that exist outside any terrestrial frame of reference? Ensign Zekli, the Vulnari pilot, raised a concern that had been troubling the entire alien delegation. Commander, our analysis suggests this creature will be effective against individual void hunters, but their usual deployment involves swarms of hundreds or thousands of units. Even a perfect predator cannot defeat those numbers. Dr. Chen looked up from her behavioral notes. You might be underestimating what makes saltwater crocodiles so effective. It's not just their individual hunting ability, it's their psychological impact on their ecosystem. She activated another video display, this one showing aerial footage of a river system in the Northern Territory. This is Goliath's natural territory. Notice anything about the wildlife patterns. The footage showed various animals approaching the water to drink, but their behavior was distinctly different near certain areas. Deer approached some sections of the riverbank confidently, while avoiding others entirely. Birds that normally fished in shallow water gave specific areas a wide berth. They're reacting to his presence even when they can't see him, Dr. Morrison explained. Saltwater crocodiles are apex predators, but more importantly, they're apex fear generators. Their mere presence changes the behavior of every other creature in their territory. Velter's translator struggled with the concept. Fear as a tactical weapon. Exactly, Goliath doesn't need to kill every threat individually. His presence creates a zone of terror that affects the psychology of potential prey. Animals make mistakes when they're afraid. They become predictable. They become vulnerable. The implications hit the alien delegation simultaneously. Commander Velter's skin shifted to a deeper blue, which Dr. Chen had learned indicated intense concentration. The Void Hunters operate as a collective consciousness. They share sensory information and adapt based on shared experiences. If one encounters an unprecedented threat, something that induces a fear response they've never experienced, that psychological disruption could cascade through their entire network. You're talking about psychological warfare on a galactic scale, Dr. Morrison said slowly, using a crocodile as a terror weapon against an alien invasion force. Not a terror weapon, Dr. Chen corrected. A predator doing what predators do best, disrupting the ecosystem of their prey. The fact that the prey happens to be alien invaders is almost secondary. Over the next day, the preparations took on an almost surreal quality. The Vulnari had brought technologies that seemed like magic, environmental controls that could perfectly replicate any planetary condition, weapons systems that could target individual molecules, and most importantly, a containment system that would allow Goliath to be deployed anywhere in the galaxy while maintaining optimal hunting conditions. Dr. Chen spent hours working with alien engineers to design what amounted to a portable ecosystem. The transport chamber would contain not just Goliath, but a complete aquatic environment including live prey fish, appropriate vegetation, and even a sunrise-sunset simulation calibrated to his natural circadian rhythms. The psychological state of the predator is crucial, she explained to Velter as they finalized the environmental specifications. Goliath needs to feel confident and territorial when he's deployed. A stressed or confused crocodile is significantly less effective than one operating in optimal psychological condition. The Thulnari engineers marveled at the complexity required to maintain a single biological organism. Their own military deployments relied on technological systems that could be replicated, repaired, or replaced. The concept of caring for a living weapon that had unique psychological needs was entirely foreign to their experience. On our worlds, we eliminated apex predators millions of years ago, Ensign Zekli admitted as he helped calibrate the chamber's water circulation systems. We thought intelligence meant controlling our environment completely. We never considered that predators might be more effective than our technology. Dr. Morrison smiled grimly. Humans learned a long time ago that sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to find something that's already really good at solving that type of problem. We didn't create Goliath, evolution did. We just learned to respect what evolution created. The final challenge was deployment strategy. The Thulnari military doctrine relied on overwhelming firepower and technological superiority. The concept of deploying a single biological unit against a massive invasion force required a complete rethinking of their tactical approach. The key is timing and positioning, Dr. Chen explained during the final strategy session. Crocodiles are ambush predators. They don't charge into battle. They wait for the perfect moment and then strike with devastating effectiveness. You can't use Goliath like a conventional weapon. You have to use him like a crocodile. Commander Velter studied the tactical displays, showing Void Hunter fleet movements. Their swarm formations rely on collective coordination. If we could disrupt their formation by eliminating key command units. Goliath won't distinguish between command units and regular soldiers, Dr. Morrison warned. He'll attack whatever presents the most interesting challenge, but that might actually work in your favor. Crocodiles are excellent at identifying the most dangerous threat in their environment. Because that's usually the best prey, Dr. Chen added. Alpha predators, pack leaders, anything that other creatures defer to, those are the targets that provide the most satisfaction for an apex predator. As the sun set on what might be Goliath's last day on Earth, Dr. Chen found herself standing alone at the edge of his enclosure. The massive crocodile had been unusually active all day, as if sensing the change that was coming. His amber eyes tracked her movement as she approached the water's edge. "You have no idea what you're about to become part of, do you?" she said softly. "You're about to be the most important predator in galactic history." Goliath's response was typical. He slid silently into the water, becoming nearly invisible except for his eyes and nostrils. In the gathering darkness, he looked like a piece of floating debris, perfectly camouflaged and utterly lethal. Dr. Morrison joined her as the Thulnari completed their final systems checks. "Are we doing the right thing, sending him out there to face something we can't even imagine?" Dr. Chen considered the question seriously. Goliath is what he is, a perfect predator shaped by millions of years of evolution. He survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, and the rise of human civilization. If anything in the universe can handle alien invaders, it's a saltwater crocodile that spent his entire life proving he's the most dangerous thing in his environment. And if the Void Hunters are more dangerous than anything Earth has produced? She turned to look at him, her expression calm but determined. Then they're about to learn why evolution makes better predators than engineering. The loading process took place at dawn, with Goliath responding to the procedure with surprising cooperation. Perhaps he sensed the importance of what was happening, or perhaps he was simply curious about the new environment being offered. The transport chamber had been designed to feel like a natural upgrade to his terrestrial habitat, larger, more complex, with better hunting opportunities. As the crystalline container sealed and began its integration with the Thulnari vessel, Dr. Chen felt a mixture of pride and terror. They were sending Earth's finest predator to represent their planet in a conflict that would determine the fate of multiple civilizations. Commander Velter approached her as the loading process completed. "Dr. Chen, your planet's contribution to this effort may determine whether the Galactic Council survives the next month. If we succeed, Earth will be offered full membership and technological advancement that will accelerate your species' development by centuries. And if you fail, then the Void Hunters will continue their expansion until they reach your solar system. Earth's isolation will not protect you forever. Dr. Chen nodded, watching as the alien vessel began its departure procedures. Take care of him, Commander. Goliath isn't just a weapon, he's a living creature that deserves respect. We understand, Velter replied. And perhaps when this is over, your species can teach us more about working with biological systems instead of replacing them with technology. As the whisper of stars rose silently into the morning sky, Dr. Chen realized that everything had changed. Earth was no longer alone in the universe, and their most ancient predators were about to face their greatest challenge. The galaxy was about to discover what millions of years of terrestrial evolution could produce. And somewhere in the crystalline chamber rising toward the stars, Goliath was preparing for the hunt of his lifetime. The battle for Kepler Station was supposed to be a last stand. Admiral Thorne watched the tactical displays with growing despair as the Void Hunter fleet approached the mining complex that housed over 3 million civilians from 12 different species. His combined fleet of 200 ships represented the largest military force the Galactic Council had ever assembled, and according to every tactical analysis, it wouldn't be enough. Enemy fleet composition confirmed, reported his tactical officer, a crystalline Altarian whose voice carried harmonics of barely controlled panic. 734 bioships in pyramid formation. Energy signatures suggest they've adapted countermeasures to every weapon system we deployed at Rigel Prime. Admiral Thorne studied the approaching fleet through the bridge's main viewport. The Void Hunter ships looked more like living creatures than spacecraft, organic curves and pulsing energy conduits that shifted and changed as they moved through space. Each ship was unique, having evolved in response to different threats, but they moved together with perfect coordination. Time to engagement. 43 minutes at current approach speed. And our special delivery. Commander Velter approached from the communications station, his skin cycling through shades of blue that indicated severe stress. The transport vessel is in position. Dr. Chen's protocols have been followed precisely. The creature appears calm and alert. But Admiral, I must emphasize that we're essentially deploying a single biological organism against a fleet that destroyed our most advanced battle group. Admiral Thorne nodded grimly. Commander, 3 days ago I would have considered this plan insane. But 3 days ago I also thought energy shields were impenetrable and quantum torpedoes were unstoppable. The Void Hunters have proven that our assumptions about military superiority were dangerously wrong. He gestured toward the tactical display showing their own fleet formations. Every ship you see represents centuries of technological development, billions of credits in research and construction, and the finest military minds in the galaxy. And none of it has been effective against an enemy that treats our most advanced weapons as minor inconveniences. The communication system crackled with an incoming transmission from the Whisper of Stars. Dr. Morrison's voice, transmitted across interstellar space through alien technology, carried a mixture of scientific excitement and paternal concern. Admiral Thorne, this is Dr. Morrison. Goliath's vital signs are excellent. He's displaying typical pre-hunt behavior, increased alertness, territorial posturing, and what we call target assessment. The environmental chamber is functioning perfectly. Dr. Morrison, can you give us any prediction about his behavior once deployed? There was a pause before the response came back. Admiral, I've studied saltwater crocodiles for 30 years, and Goliath specifically for the past 5. But what you're asking him to do, hunt in an environment unlike anything Earth has produced, that's outside any behavioral model I can create. All I can tell you is that he's a perfect predator operating at peak efficiency. Admiral Thorne closed his eyes briefly, considering the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. The plan was elegantly simple and utterly unprecedented. Deploy Goliath directly onto one of the Void Hunter command ships during the initial engagement, when their defensive systems would be focused on the conventional fleet attack. The transport chamber had been modified with Dulnari technology that could analyze the internal atmosphere and environment of any target vessel and instantly adapt Goliath's deployment habitat to match. Whether the enemy ship was filled with breathable atmosphere, toxic gases, or even vacuum, The chamber would ensure that Goliath could survive and operate effectively. 15 minutes to engagement range, announced the tactical officer. Admiral Thorne activated the fleet-wide communication system. All ships, this is Admiral Thorne. In 14 minutes, we're going to attempt something that has never been tried in the history of galactic warfare. We're going to deploy a biological weapon against an enemy that has adapted to every technological threat we've presented. He paused, looking around the bridge at the assembled representatives of dozens of different species, all united in their determination to stop the Void Hunter's advance. I want every ship to follow the engagement protocol exactly. Our conventional attack must appear overwhelming and desperate, because it is. The enemy needs to focus entirely on our fleet actions while we deliver our special payload. If this works, we may finally have found something the Void Hunters cannot adapt to. If it doesn't, we fall back and evacuate Kepler Station, finished his second-in-command. The next 10 minutes passed with agonizing slowness. The Void Hunter fleet approached in perfect formation, their bioships pulsing with absorbed energy from previous battles. Intelligence reports suggested that some of those ships had been feeding on the wreckage of destroyed fleets for weeks, growing larger and more powerful with each engagement. Energy spike detected, the tactical officer called out. The enemy fleet is charging weapon systems. Configuration suggests they're preparing the same adaptive energy drainage that neutralized our attack at Procyon. All ships begin conventional assault, Admiral Thorne ordered. Make it look like we're throwing everything we have at them. The space between the fleets erupted in brilliant displays of energy as quantum torpedoes, plasma cannons, and gravitational disruptors filled the void with destructive force. The Galactic Council's most advanced weapons systems engaged targets with precision that represented the pinnacle of military technology. And just as predicted, the Void Hunter fleet began adapting. Their bioships absorbed the energy from direct hits, their hulls shifted to deflect kinetic rounds, and their defensive systems evolved countermeasures in real time. Within minutes, the devastating barrage had become merely an impressive light show. Admiral, Commander Velter reported from his position at the deployment station, the enemy fleet is performing exactly as predicted. All attention is focused on our conventional attack. Goliath's transport is approaching the designated target, the largest command vessel in their central formation. Admiral Thorne watched the tactical display as a small, nearly invisible craft approached the massive Void Hunter command ship. The vessel was easily 3 times the size of their largest battlecruiser, its organic hull pulsing with absorbed energy from the ongoing battle. It was the heart of the enemy fleet's coordination, the nexus through which their collective consciousness operated. It was also about to receive a visitor unlike anything it had ever encountered. Transport chamber is analyzing target vessel's internal environment, Velter reported. Atmosphere is unusual. High concentrations of what appears to be organic compounds, elevated temperature, and gravitational fields slightly above Earth normal. Can the chamber adapt? Already adapting. Dr. Chen's environmental protocols are being implemented. The chamber is creating a transitional atmosphere that will allow the creature to operate effectively. On the main display, Admiral Thorne could see the transport chamber making contact with the Void Hunter command ship. The alien vessel's hull began to react to the contact, attempting to absorb or repel what it probably interpreted as some kind of technological probe. Instead, the chamber's hull dissolved, and 2 tons of perfectly evolved apex predator was introduced to an alien environment that had never known fear. The initial response from the Void Hunter command ship was confusion. The biovessel's sensory systems detected an intrusion, but the readings made no sense. The intruder wasn't generating energy signatures, wasn't broadcasting technological transmissions, and wasn't attempting to interface with their systems. It was simply present. And then it began to move. Goliath's first few minutes aboard the alien vessel were spent doing what saltwater crocodiles do best, assessing his environment and identifying threats. The ship's interior was a maze of organic corridors that pulsed with bioluminescent lighting, filled with a thick atmosphere that carried scents unlike anything from Earth. But predators adapt, and Goliath was the product of millions of years of predatory evolution. The floor was solid enough to support his weight. The atmosphere was breathable thanks to the chamber's environmental adaptation. And most importantly, there were creatures moving through the corridors, creatures that registered as potential prey. His first encounter with a void hunter was everything Dr. Chen could have hoped for, and everything the aliens could have feared. The void hunter was a nightmare fusion of organic and technological components, standing nearly 8 feet tall with appendages that sparked with absorbed energy. It had never encountered anything like Goliath, and its initial response was to attempt technological analysis, scanning for energy signatures, attempting to establish communication protocols, trying to understand what type of artificial construct it was facing. Goliath's response was more direct. He attacked. The speed of his strike was shocking even by Saltwater Crocodile standards. The Void Hunter had perhaps half a second to register movement before nearly a ton of perfectly designed killing machine clamped jaws around its central torso. The bite force that could crush industrial equipment made quick work of alien anatomy, regardless of how advanced it might be. But the true effect wasn't the destruction of a single enemy unit. It was the psychological impact that rippled through the ship's collective consciousness. For the first time in their existence, the Void Hunters encountered something that operated completely outside their understanding. Goliath wasn't using technology they could analyze, wasn't following tactical protocols they could predict, and wasn't generating any energy signatures they could counter. He was pure biological imperative: hunt, kill, dominate territory. The ship's corridors became a nightmare maze where the most advanced predators in the galaxy discovered what it felt like to be prey. "Admiral," the communications officer called out excitedly, "we're detecting massive disruption in the enemy fleet's coordination patterns. The command ship's energy signatures are becoming erratic." Admiral Thorne watched in amazement as the Void Hunter formation began to break apart. Ships that had moved with perfect synchronization moments before were now operating independently, their collective consciousness disrupted by signals of panic and confusion from their command vessel. "The creature is exceeding all predictions," Commander Velter reported. "Internal sensors from the command ship show the target moving through the vessel's critical systems areas. But it's not just the physical damage. The enemy's collective consciousness appears to be experiencing something unprecedented." "What do you mean?" "Fear, Admiral. For the first time in their recorded history, the Void Hunters are experiencing fear." Inside the command ship, Goliath was doing what came naturally, establishing dominance over his new territory. Each Void Hunter he encountered reinforced his understanding that this environment contained abundant prey and no significant threats. The aliens' energy weapons were ineffective against his armored hide. Their technological advantages were meaningless against instinct-driven attacks, and their collective intelligence was useless against a predator that operated on pure biological programming. He moved through the ship's critical systems with methodical efficiency, following scent trails and vibrations that led him to the most important areas. His territorial instincts drove him to eliminate anything that might challenge his control of this new environment, and the ship's vital systems became casualties of his relentless advance. But the real devastation was psychological. Every Void Hunter that encountered Goliath transmitted its experience to the collective consciousness. The terror of facing something completely unpredictable, the helplessness of watching their most advanced defenses prove useless, and the primal recognition of being outclassed by a superior predator. The effect cascaded through the entire fleet. Ships that had operated as perfect extensions of a collective began making individual decisions based on self-preservation. Formation integrity collapsed as individual vessels attempted to distance themselves from the source of the disruption. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported with barely contained excitement, "the enemy fleet is breaking formation. Multiple ships are beginning independent retreat vectors." "And our losses?" "Minimal, sir. The enemy's adaptive defenses appear to have shut down entirely. They're not responding to our conventional attacks." Admiral Thorne realized they were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic military history: the complete psychological defeat of a technologically superior enemy by a single biological organism operating on pure instinct. "All ships press the attack," he ordered. "Target ships attempting to flee, don't let them regroup." The battle that followed was less a military engagement than a rout. Void hunter ships that had seemed invincible hours before were now fleeing in panic, their collective consciousness shattered by an encounter with something their million-year evolution had never prepared them for. Hours later, as the last enemy vessel disappeared into hyperspace, Admiral Thorne found himself staring at tactical displays that showed something impossible, a complete victory against the Void Hunters with minimal casualties. "Commander Velter," he said finally, "what's the status of our special asset?" "Goliath has established complete territorial control over the command vessel," Velter replied. "According to our sensors, he's currently resting in what appears to be the ship's central command chamber. All Void Hunter life signs aboard that vessel have ceased." "And the ship itself?" "Intact but non-functional. The creature appears to have eliminated the crew without damaging critical systems. From an intelligence standpoint, capturing an intact Void Hunter command vessel is invaluable." Admiral Thorne shook his head in amazement. "A single Earth predator accomplished what our combined fleets couldn't. How do we even begin to understand what happened here?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Chen's voice crackled through the communication system from Earth, where she had been monitoring the engagement through quantum transmission feeds. "Admiral, what you witnessed was 65 million years of evolution meeting a species that evolved without predators. The Void Hunters are apex consumers. They've never encountered anything that treated them as prey. Goliath didn't just defeat them physically. He introduced a concept their entire psychology was incapable of processing. Which was that there are still things in the universe more dangerous than they are." In the weeks that followed, the Battle of Kepler Station became the turning point in the war against the Void Hunters. News of the defeat spread throughout their collective consciousness, carrying with it the psychological trauma of their first encounter with true predation. Other human predators were recruited for the war effort. Great white sharks proved devastatingly effective against Void Hunter aquatic forms. Siberian tigers excelled at eliminating enemy units in complex terrain. African lions worked as coordinated packs to overwhelm larger enemy formations. But Goliath remained unique, the first and most terrifying example of what Earth's evolution could produce when given sufficient time and hostile conditions. The war ended not with grand battles or technological breakthroughs, but with the gradual retreat of an enemy that had lost its will to fight. The Void Hunters' collective consciousness remained permanently scarred by their encounters with terrestrial predators, and their expansion across the galaxy came to an abrupt halt. Earth was invited to join the Galactic Council as a full member, with the understanding that their planet's unique evolutionary history made them invaluable allies. Technology transfers began immediately, but perhaps more importantly, the galaxy began to reconsider its approach to biological systems. Dr. Chen found herself serving as Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Council, where her expertise in predator psychology became crucial in establishing defensive strategies that incorporated biological rather than purely technological solutions. And Goliath, after his military service, he was returned to Earth as a hero with a specially designed habitat that incorporated the best of both terrestrial and galactic technology. He lived out his remaining years as the most famous predator in galactic history, blissfully unaware that he had changed the course of multiple civilizations by simply doing what saltwater crocodiles do best, being the most dangerous thing in his environment. The galaxy had asked Earth for a monster, and humanity had delivered exactly what they requested. The fact that Earth's monsters were simply the products of natural evolution, shaped by millions of years of survival in one of the universe's most hostile environments, was a lesson that resonated throughout galactic civilization for centuries to come. Sometimes the best technology is no technology at all. Sometimes the most effective weapon is simply a predator that has spent millions of years learning to be perfect at what it does. And sometimes, when faced with an impossible enemy, the answer lies not in building something new, but in unleashing something very, very old. The universe had learned to fear the monsters of Earth, and Earth's monsters had proven that 65 million years of evolution created predators that no amount of advanced technology could match.